Hey everybody, it's Jay, and I'm here talking about the Mossberg 590M shotgun. This one is the deluxe model that has the ghost ring sights and the heat shield. And of course, the most obvious difference between this and a standard 590 is that it is detachable magazine fed versus tube fed. I thought about doing something clever with the magazine tube where I tried to load a shell in and then acted like I was surprised because there was a plug in here, but then I realized I wasn't really going to be fooling anybody because you'll know exactly what this gun is between the title and the thumbnail. So instead of cleverness, I'll go for directness. But before we start getting into some of the specifics of the design and the detail, I'll go ahead and cut over to some shooting footage. What you're about to see is the first 40 rounds that we put through this shotgun. I only had the 10-round magazine at the time, so that initial test footage is only done with the 10-round magazine. And then I'll come back, like I said, cover some of the features, and then end with my overall impressions.
Mossberg 590M. First shots, by the way.
Safety is on. Whew. Okay, so I just double fed it.
Sweet.
So it kind of was a little chunky on that first cycle, and I ended up double feeding it because I short shucked it. So
kind of a half 50-50, huh?
Yeah, you really have to. I really had to be aggressive on that first cycle. So
590M again.
This time we're shooting Remington ammo in it. We were shooting Federal before. These are just the cheapest.
So you're putting Remington ammo in a Mossberg.
Yep.
That's gonna go well.
Again, I keep getting safetied.
You know what I'm thinking of right now?
What's that?
Don't call me fat, kid. 590M.
This is with Winchester. This is just a white box. Clear. I have 5 rounds. The first 5 rounds are Winchester PDX-1 self-defense loads, 2 3/4, and then the last 5 are Remington double-aught buck. And I'm only doing 5 and 5 because they're expensive. Okay, I have short shut. Short shut 1. I've also lost my front sight.
Cool.
Yep.
Didn't Tim have that same exact problem?
I do not know.
I believe so.
Huh, okay.
590M. Let's see how I can screw this up.
I smoothed it out for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had no issues with the 10-round magazine when we were out at the range. I did short shuck a few times. I tend to do that. I tend to try to shoot fast, and I'm more used to semi-automatics than pump actions. So that is one thing that was entirely on me from a failure standpoint. I did also notice that it was really pretty tough and pretty chunky the first few rounds. Now, Misha and I suspect a few things about that. For one, these guns are typically pretty heavily parked, so when you first get them, they tend to be pretty stiff on the action. The other thing, too, is the magazine was brand new. It was actually pretty difficult to load the first time, and then over the course of cycling it, now about 90 times, it's pretty well loosened up. Now, it's not buttery smooth or anything like that. You are still getting some upward pressure against the bolt as you're cycling the action that you don't normally have on a tube-fed shotgun. So that is something that I've heard other people complain about and having difficulty cycling that. So I wanted to go ahead and get the 20-round mag, which has come in since, out to the range And for one, see if I had any malfunctions with it, and also see if I noticed any perceptible difference in cycling the action. Alright, so I'm out here once again with the 10-round magazine. This is loaded with Winchester White Box low brass. I know that this ammo has cycled fine in this magazine before, but I wanted to try to shoot it and then shoot the 20-round magazine back to back to see if I could notice any cycling differences or see if there were any differences in reliability. So that's 10 rounds, 10-round magazine. Now for the 20, I have not yet fired this in this gun yet, so we'll see how this goes. So I just had a double feed. I don't know if it's because I short shucked it or if one popped out of the mag. Okay, so it's clear. Okay, clear. So I think I may have short chucked on that one double feed, but not content not knowing that for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and load another 20 and then come right back out. Okay, 20 more rounds in. I'm going to start with some defense loads and then move back over to some of the Remington target loads. So making sure I was actually cycling it properly, I had no issues on that one either. So there you go. 20 rounds, actually 40 rounds using that magazine. So I saw a comment on someone else's video that someone asked the question if these could be side loaded, so load a live round in through the ejection port. Of course you can easily with a magazine because it just drops right in. But with no magazine in, if you try to load it in, it's just going to fall right through. You can load it directly into the chamber, then close it and fire it. But really, the whole point of being able to side load is just getting a round back in the chamber as soon as possible because loading the tube is so slow. With this, you have a magazine, so I'm not really sure even why it's an issue. So I can tell you that after 50 rounds, 52 rounds total of firing this pump action shotgun, I'm very grateful to have the heat shield because this barrel got very, very hot. I'm not used to shooting that many rounds that quickly out of a pump action. So, and of course the detachable magazines made that very easy. But I had no failures on the 20 round, except I did have one double feed that I suspect was again on me with short chucking it. When I made very deliberate motions, it seemed to be fine. The 20 round magazine is quite a bit more difficult to load than the 10 round. There's a lot more magazine pressure. These magazines are double stack mags. Like on the Saigas and Vepers, you typically see single stack mag. And then 20 rounds, 25 rounds, you're getting into drum category, which adds a lot of extra width to the gun. Mossberg has figured out a way to do a double stack design, which mitigates a lot of the big chunkiness you see on a lot of larger capacity box magazine fed guns. Shotguns in particular, because of course you're loading a very large chunky shell into a magazine, so the more you put in there, the bigger the magazine is going to be, and oftentimes it ends up looking pretty comically huge. But even with the 20 round magazine, there's not really much of any interference whenever you're actuating the pump because the mags are a lot slimmer than something like a drum, which is pretty nice. Now going back to the difficulty to load part, one thing that I noticed is these magazines are notched for the shell, for the rim. So whenever you push the shell in, you have to push it down and kind of slide it back to get it to lock in. There's even a little guide there that kind of angles the shell down. But when you're dealing with low brass loads, what's going to end up trying to happen is the rim is going to try to catch on the cup of the next round down, because you have such a pretty narrow window to load those in on top of each other. So Misha was really struggling with loading these because he couldn't see where the cup was ending with the rim, and whenever he was trying to slide the shell back on top of another shell, it was just catching on the cup. It's kind of hard to explain, but once, I think if you ever get hands on one of these, you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. So the trick really is to get the rim of one cup on top of the cup of the other and not in front of it, because if you get in front of it, whenever you go to push it back, it's going to catch and hang up. Another thing that you can do that I noticed is whenever you push it down in, kind of push down on the front of the shell, which will kind of pop it up and over the cup, and then you can slide it back and load it just fine. So the 10 round is actually now pretty easy for me to load. I've gotten the rhythm down on it pretty easily, and it's also loosened up quite a bit because I've been shooting it a fair amount. The 20 round, on the other hand, is still pretty tough. I wouldn't say go so far as to say it's maybe even as tough as loading a larger capacity pistol magazine. Maybe about equivalent. It's not too bad, but of course you're dealing with nice plastic magazines with big round shells, so it's not as uncomfortable to load, even though it is, it starts getting pretty tight once you get around 15 shells in. So they do offer a variety of magazines, 5, 10, 15, and 20. I have 2 10s and 2 20s, but they're very expensive. Mossberg's site has them listed at about $105, where Primary Arms, I think, had them listed for around 110 whenever I was shopping around. Of course, these prices are going to vary depending on when you're watching this video. I was able to find them on Grab-A-Gun for about anywhere from $55 to $75, depending on capacity, and kind of went up in $10 increments depending on which capacity you were getting. So, at the end of the day, if you're going to buy multiple magazines for this shotgun, you could very easily end up in the magazines for as much as you have in the shotgun. And I don't quite have that, but it's pretty close. So, functionality, like I said, was pretty good. Really no errors that I can personally attribute to magazine failure or firearm failure. One thing, though, you'll see in the shooting footage is I did lose my front sight. You can see there is a front sight on there now. But what I discovered happened after I was looking a little bit closer, after I was down crawling around on the ground trying to find where the front sight blade ended up, is there is a very, 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 very small, I don't know if that's going to show up on camera or not, but a very small Allen screw that tensions down on that front sight to hold it in. And now that's great if you're wanting to very easily swap the sight out or very easily make adjustments, but I have a little bit of concern about something like a shotgun, like a pump action shotgun at that has a lot of force moving around, especially on the muzzle end, that little Allen screw isn't going to hold that blade in for very long. Mine wasn't even Loctited in. So what I ended up doing is the front sight blade on it is just very basic. Now this, of course, only applies to the Ghost Ring models. If you're getting the standard models, you're going to have a standard bead. What I ended up doing is ordering a replacement front sight. This is a Meprolight Tru-Dot. I didn't say Tru-Dot, I said Tru-Dot. And it is a night sight. So a lot better, I think, than just the little painted orange blade that was on there before. I added a little bit of epoxy into the dovetail whenever I put this sight in. And I went a little bit further and peened the dovetail a little bit to add just a little bit of extra tension on there. And then I used some Loctite finally on the little set screw. Because that little set screw, like I said, is tiny. It's so tiny that even tightening it down, you're going to risk torquing your Allen wrench. So, just something that I noticed because, again, in the video, you're going to see me shooting it, and I will even comment that I lost my front sight. I found it, figured out what happened is that little set screw backed out, and after shooting now this evening, after testing the 20 round mag, I didn't have that issue again. It stayed pretty firmly in. All right, other impressions. So the magazines, like I mentioned, not super difficult to load, just a little bit tricky. You have to just learn how to do it, and after that it smooths up quite a bit. But one other thing that I heard people complain about is that the tension on the 20 round mag pushes up so much on the bolt that it actually makes it really difficult to cycle. So I shot the 10 and the 20 back to back, and to be quite honest, I didn't really notice much different. It felt like it was a little harder to chamber, to pull forward on the 20 than on the 10, but it wasn't something that I had any issue with personally, and quite frankly, it's not anything that's going to stop me from shooting it. The nice thing on these magazines is they do seem very overbuilt, which is really good. A lot of higher capacity 12 gauge magazines that I've had hands-on with have been pretty cheap feeling, like really soft polymers. These are not soft, they're very rigid. And then they have lots of reinforcements and things. There's even a steel reinforcement in the top near the feed lips. So even though they're very expensive, they do feel really well made and they feel like they're going to last. As far as my opinion goes on the shotgun, now I did purchase the shotgun for myself. Is this going to replace your tube-fed pump action? And my personal opinion is no. If I already had a pump action, a full-size pump action shotgun, which I didn't before this, I probably wouldn't have bought this one. I probably would have bought just a standard tube-fed 590. But Misha did get these in for a pretty good deal, and because of that, they were quite a bit under MSRP. Because of that, I went ahead and went with it because I like the idea of a detachable magazine-fed shotgun and thought maybe that might actually get me to shoot the gun a little bit more. And so far, honestly, it has. I've put a lot more rounds through it than I would normally a pump-action tube-fed shotgun. So final verdict on this is I really do like the shotgun. It works well. It seemed to work quite well for me. I really like the configuration of the heat shield and the ghost rings, and really having the detachable magazines is actually pretty cool. So rock it out in and out pretty easily. They load relatively easily, and the gun works. Now, like I said, I would not pay close to MSRP for one of these because for me, the magazine feature is not really something that I think warrants any extra price tag. And then, like I said as well, the magazines are quite expensive on top of that. So once you look at getting spare magazines for the shotgun, you're already looking at spending quite a bit over what you would for a tube fed. If you're interested in seeing if it achieves what Mossberg set out to accomplish, I think that's fair to say. I think it totally does. And so, yeah, it's hard not to recommend if you just really, really want a detachable magazine pump action shotgun. Personally, my preferred and my go-to shotgun is the Mossberg 930 Spx Tactical, which has a 16-inch barrel and a 2-inch breacher on the end of it to make it the legal minimum 18-inch length. It's a beautiful shotgun to shoot. It's extremely light, extremely handy, and of course it mitigates a lot of the recoil because it's semi-auto, but of course it's tube fed. It's a neat idea. I can totally see somebody wanting one. I'm glad I have one. I'll keep shooting it and enjoy it, and I'm sure you'll see it in future videos as well. For what it's worth, this front sight has worked pretty well. I checked it in low light and it glows perfectly well. This is, again, the Meprolight Tru-Dot front sight blade upgrade. So if you like this video, please click like. Be sure to subscribe to us if you're interested in seeing more videos from us. We have a pretty extensive backlog that's mainly historical firearms, but we do quite a bit of modern stuff and some projects as well as a few knife and sword videos here and there too. And if you're interested in helping support us and help us get out to the range a little bit more often, please check the link to our Patreon page. This is Jay, and we'll catch you again very soon next time with hopefully more interesting videos or something along those lines, I think is the script. Thanks, guys.